Welcome to the October 5th edition of the PFF Forecast. We have a great show today. As I mentioned on the last show, we are going to have a revolving door of great guests. We have a recurring guest that will be joining us for the first time today. He's a real treat. And I don't say that just because he comes from Canada. That's a good teaser for you. We're going to talk Thursday night and Sunday night football from a scheme perspective. That'll be a lot of fun. Then we're going to bring another guest on and we are going to figure out our lock of the week. I also have a brand new segment that we are debuting. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Let's rock. I've got Brad Spielberger, who somehow managed to make it from Sunday night all the way to Wednesday evening. And we have a good friend of the podcast, friend of the show, Seth Galina. Seth, you've been all over the place, man. You've done everything. You've written college football. You've been on a podcast. You've hosted your own podcast. You've been on Chris's podcast consistently. And now you're so valuable that we've taken you off of all the podcasts, all of the content, because the people that are paid the big bucks to call football want to hear your thoughts. Tell us more about that.
Well, I'm just happy for you and Eric to have me back on. Eric, love seeing you. You look great. Goatee is really popping off now these days. No, Brad, you know I love you. So this is going to be fun. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm prepping the big wigs, helping prep the big wigs for Thursday night and Sunday night football. You know, when the boss calls, I listen. So there you go. So just watching a lot of film, making sure that I know exactly all the moves of the left guard from the Giants and the right guard from the Chiefs and everything in between. So, you know.
So that's just the center for the Raiders. Seth is being kind here. He is on call for both Chris and Chris Collinsworth and Kirk Herbstreit. Meets with them each week to help them prepare to call the game. Works really closely with Ben Lindsay, who's a secret superstar here at PFF, and really manages that entire process. So it's going to be cool. We're going to get to kind of pick your brain from a football standpoint about both of these marquee matchups. And for all of the members of the printing press, what we were thinking about here is, you know, in the previous version of the forecast, Eric and I gave our football takes in certain situations, but we tried to stick to, you know, a numbers-based analysis and trying to broaden the perspective that we give to the esteemed members of the press so that we can make the best investments with our money possible.
What if I came in here and started talking about like rushing yards above expectation and all that stuff? Yeah, you'd love that. That'd be like you and Eric all over again.
The only rule is that you can't start talking soccer.
All right, I'll see you guys later.
Yeah, no soccer and no none of those like lunch sandwiches things. You remember that?
No. Yeah, I remember that.
Can you tell the members of the press what your take is, because it's really extraordinary?
I don't even remember if I was pro or against party sandwiches at this point. But party sandwiches. It must be of course, Canada under the now the King's dominion, and I'm just a servant. Thank you. I'm just a servant of the Commonwealth. So maybe it's just a Commonwealth thing. But party sandwiches are like little tiny sandwiches, maybe 3 inches by an inch, I guess. You know, rectangular shape usually. With, you know, egg salad sandwich type things, tuna, both, maybe cream cheese, something like that. Those are pretty much, you know, maybe a salmon spread. Very small sandwiches, you know, eat them at a funeral, eat them at a wedding, I don't know, something like that, at a brunch. That's party sandwich. And that's,
aren't they
again, I don't remember whether I liked it. Yeah, some of them were rolled up. Some of them were
rolled up and sliced into these thin little slices, almost like a cake slice, circular cake slice. And I think your take was that they were delightful. And
I stick by that tape.
Yeah. All you had to do was tell me that it's the food of funerals, and you know you're on to something really great. Let's move on to something you actually know well. And that is football. We're going to start with Colts Broncos. I mean, they back in whenever they made the schedule, they were like, wow, 2 teams, new quarterbacks, both Super Bowl contenders. And the result is 2 of the most, if not the most, this side of the Washington Commanders and Carson Wentz, disappointing starts to the season. Where do you start with these 2 teams, Seth?
I actually think it's interesting because there's a lot of similarities to kind of why both teams, offensively just haven't been very good. I think we can start with the Broncos because I get to do a little bit of I told you so, which, I mean, everyone loves doing that.
Good.
And I'm not ready. I'm not super ready to like go super hard on this take, but I think that there's a bit of Russell Wilson just aged out of his play style, right? And everyone's kind of seeing it now where it's like, hey, he can't really scramble around anymore. He doesn't really want to scramble around anymore. The pressures are leading to sacks at a high rate rather than him, being pressured and then being able to just be a magician, right? Which we saw for all those years in Seattle. You add that with, okay, that you can find a way around that. But it's that plus the fact that you can't run a quote unquote kind of full offense with him because he won't target the middle of the field. And so now that's 2 strikes. Look, his accuracy is still pretty good. I have seen some throws that I'm sure he would like back, but generally the accuracy is still pretty good. But he just like is not the same kind of athletic player that he once was. And so what are you left with? You're not left with that much. And so the offense has had to be catered to him. It's always been catered to him over the past, 5 seasons or whatever. So you just don't get a lot of juice out of it anymore. He could get back to it. Look, we're talking about Russell Wilson. This guy is a, Pro Bowl or all pro type player. He could get back to it. But right now, it's just like a thing that I think a lot of us have been saying that when it falls off, it's going to fall off fast and hard, and it's going to look like this.
It's interesting. You mentioned like how far it's fallen off. And I guess if you look at right now, it's Broncos by 3. Right, that's the spread. Broncos -3. And I don't know. I guess question kind of for both of us or everyone here to ponder is like, we have him currently, what would we have him currently like against the spread, right? Well, how many points is he worth? I'm struggling to get words out of my mouth. But I guess like in your mind, Seth, where going into a game, he is the X best quarterback in your mind, right? Because like obviously based on just the start of the season, he ain't very good.
Yeah.
But how much are you still scared of him to turn it on, I guess?
I'm not, man. I'm not. And you lose. I think the offensive line is okay. No one expected the offensive line to be very good anyways, but it's so it's okay. Maybe below average. So what is there left? The only thing, and this has kind of always been true with Russell, is like, okay, well, maybe he hits some deep balls. Maybe they get some play action stuff going and they can hit some deep balls down the field, or, the classic Russell Wilson one-on-one down the sideline. And in this case with the Broncos, it's a throw to Courtland Sutton. He's been his guy. He's been his quote unquote DK Metcalf. So maybe that's the way, but that's kind of always how it has been. And those plays have kind of been there already and they're still not very good. So like, I'm not seeing a lot of upside really. And again, like it's Russell Wilson. So like, you never know. And maybe he'll get back into these magician aspect to his game. But I'll tell you what, to me, it's the flip side when you talk about the Colts and Matt Ryan, where I'm like, oh, I can turn the tape on and like, you can turn the tape on and it'll tell you whatever you want it to tell you. But I turn the tape on, I look at Matt Ryan and I'm like, hey, obviously the results have been poor to start the season. Mm-hmm. But I look at that and I'm like, okay, the process is still there for Ryan, who obviously is a top quarterback or has been at least a top quarterback in the league for a long time. So that's where I'm like, oh, I can see this going in the right direction. But with the Broncos and obviously losing Javonte Williams, that to me is a little tougher to figure out going forward.
So I got one more thought on Russ. You mentioned he obviously doesn't scramble as much anymore. Do you also think you mentioned he doesn't use the entire field? Do you think the adoption of more and more too high kills him specifically more than other quarterbacks?
Yeah. So his thing has always been, okay, if I get single high coverage, right? And what does single high coverage mean? It means on the outside, it's one-on-ones. So if I get these one-on-ones, if the corner is off, the corner is giving some space to my receiver, I can take a throw underneath a slant. And he's hit Courtland Sutton on a few really nice slants this year. So slants and, 5-yard outs, 6-yard outs, that type of thing. And the second that corner is pressed in a one-on-one situation, I'm going down the field to DK Metcalf. I'm going down the field to Courtland Sutton. And there's been some other guys. I guess Doug Baldwin was another guy who they can win one-on-ones with on the outside back in the day. So you love that because he is a really good deep ball thrower. The moon balls are fun to watch. But the second you start playing too high, and in too high, obviously to keep it simple, you can, to a certain degree, double the outside receivers. At least you can get 2 sets of eyes on the outside receivers rather than it being an actual double team. You can get 2 sets of eyes. And so those routes are relatively eliminated to a certain degree. So you got to work the middle of the field. What do you do against cover 2? You work literally the Mike linebacker, the M linebacker, the middle linebacker, and they just don't. He just has not done that historically. And you can see the offense kind of built around. It's always been like that. Darrell Bevel, Brian Schottenheimer, and now Nathaniel Hackett. It's always been built around taking those type of passing concepts out of Russell Wilson's playbook. So bringing them back now as a 34-year-old, 35-year-old, whatever he is, it's not easy, man. He's set in his ways. We're all set in our ways. It's tough to
it's
undo
interesting
that.
You say that because actually Russell Wilson is about as good at context switching as any human on earth that I've ever seen. So it's very surprising. He has thrown over the middle of the field more this year. It's just been a nightmare, and I think that's the interesting thing. You go back and all of, we've said some not so great things about Pete Carroll in the past, but maybe there is something to this, where, Smith looks amazing. No one's, talking about his supporting cast as being fantastic, but there may very well be a case that it was sort of the perfect storm in Seattle for Russell to paint this picture of himself. And in a new kind of league ecosystem, it's not working out. But let me ask you this game is specifically, there are 2 interesting things that you said. The first was the loss of Javonte Williams. Now the Colts are also without Jonathan Taylor. They're going to be playing Nyheim Hines. What I find really interesting about that is I see Nyheim Hines as a versatile running back that can do a lot of things for you. I don't think their offense, even though Jonathan Taylor is a far superior runner, will suffer all that much. And I'm not trying to be heretical here, but bringing in Melvin Gordon, who can't catch a ball, out of the backfield in any way near the same format, I do see how that could hurt them as well. But let me actually ask you more about the matchup from the Russell Wilson, where he succeeds from against those kinds of defenses. What do the Colts do? And, how will that play into this specific matchup? A game where the Broncos are at home, they're favored by 3, basically saying these teams are about even on a neutral field, and total of 42, which is pretty darn low for Matt Ryan versus Russell Wilson. So how does that matchup shake out?
I'll start. I'll just answer your first thing, or I'll make a point about your first thing on the running backs. The issue as I watch these 2 running games is the interior of the offensive lines. It's not going to matter which running backs play because the interior of the offensive lines are horrible right now. Ryan Kelly, the center for the Colts, and the right guard, who I forgot his name, not very good. Quentin Nelson has been fine, but you can't pay the guy as much as they're paying him to be fine. And then, with the Broncos, the interior, Lloyd Cushenberry, the center, is not very good. They just can't get a push. They can't win one-on-one blocks, et cetera, et cetera. So to answer the actual question you want to answer, we're talking about Gus Bradley right now. That is the defensive coordinator for the Indianapolis Colts. And Gus Bradley is famous for playing a lot of one-high defenses consistently, always top of the league. He comes from, you just mentioned him, he comes from Pete Carroll. He was a defensive coordinator there before he left. So
defensive
that's
coordinator
what they were doing.
There.
Exactly. And so they all know. And it's funny, Pete Carroll, after that game against the Broncos in week 1 on Monday night, was saying, hey, we kind of knew a lot of stuff about Russell Wilson in terms of where we wanted to flush him, what kind of defenses we wanted to play and stuff like that. So Gus Bradley obviously knows him. Obviously, it's been a while though since they've been together, but he knows him. And he plays a lot of one high, which has been Russ's greatest, coverage to play against. Here's the funny thing. Gus Bradley always plays one high, cover three, cover three, cover three, cover three, cover three. They played against the Chiefs last week. And we remember last year when the Chiefs played against the Raiders, when Gus Bradley was the defensive coordinator for the Raiders, and the Chiefs were having all these problems, too high, they can't get the plays down the field, Tyreek Hill is not as super effective, all that stuff, and they go and play the Raiders. I think it was a night game, might have been Sunday night, and Gus Bradley comes out and he plays his cover three, and the Chiefs score the most points they had in like 4 or 5 weeks at that time. So now, skip forward a year later, the Chiefs go into Indianapolis and play against Gus Bradley again, and he changed up. He played a lot of cover 4 quarters, cover 2, all that stuff. So that Gus Bradley never does this. So that tells me something like, okay, he's willing to make these changes as the game has kind of moved, in a sense that had moved kind of past Gus Bradley to a certain degree. And maybe this year, now look, they still play a lot of cover 3. They're still going to probably lead the league in cover 3, to be honest. But at least against certain teams, against certain quarterbacks that you want to specifically game plan against, he can make those changes. So I'm very interested to see if he kind of sticks to the plan about, defeating Russ, and that's kind of playing a lot of cover 2.
Yeah. So going off of that, and actually tied into last Thursday, because I remember when the Dolphins played the Bills, they stopped playing a bunch of their usual cover 0, cover 1, and in the second half kind of confused Allen with a lot of too high shells. And then Thursday comes along, we have Joe Burrow as one of the best quarterbacks against cover 0, cover 1, and they played like 40% of cover 0 snaps. Can you talk maybe if it's difficult on a Thursday on a short week to kind of install some of those things? Is that why it was the case? And could that be the case again for the Colts this week?
It's possible. I hate that excuse, to be honest. Like,
no excuses, play like a champion.
No excuses, play like a champion. Exactly. Like, hey, like I get it. It's a very short week. I mean, a turnaround from Sunday to Thursday is obviously not a lot of practice time. It's not a lot of meeting time. But at the end of the day, if you don't have cover 2 installed from August, from July, from OTAs or whatever, then we got a problem, right? So I think you got to be able to play. Now, I understand trust is the factor here. Like, do I trust myself or my players, and as a play caller, do I trust my players to execute this coverage that we don't play very often? That I get that. But at the end of the day, like, we have to game plan against the players that we're playing against, and not just a generic group of players. So to me, it's probably true what you're saying. I just don't like it as an excuse. So I hope that he does, for his sake and for the Colts' sake, I hope that he does change it up and play the stuff that teams have shown on film that Russell Wilson has problems with.
We'll transition to the next game here in a second on the PFF app, which you can download right now by searching PFF on the Apple App Store. We have a cool feature that highlights the biggest mismatches in every game. And I think every time that I try and look at a game, obviously I'm looking at the model and seeing what does that generalization of all of the data points lead me to. But I'm also trying to highlight, things that the model as it's currently constituted can't see, right? And those individual matchups, how they kind of function on a play-to-play basis, how they might impact given the scheme that each team is running, are things that I'm trying to tease out. So in your mind, where is the biggest mismatch in this game? And is it something that, in your mind is deciding whether the Broncos can cover 3 or the Colts are able to keep it close?
All right, I'm going to get specific here. Grover Stewart, I believe is his name. I hope I'm about to tell you the biggest matchup, and I hope I got his name right. Yeah, his first name is Grover. Okay, right? So there you go.
Yeah, that's defensive,
and it should be like a Sinbad type of situation, right? Where he just goes by Grover, like the Muppet, not or the whatever. Anyways,
Grover Stewart is his name.
Off topic here. Grover Stewart. Yes. Okay.
Albany State Golden Ram, I might add.
Wow. So he's been very good. He's been very good for the past few years against the run. And he's going to line up inside, and he's going to absolutely demolish the Broncos run game. And, one of the issues with the Broncos run game is it's very basic. I mean, they line up, it's a lot of shotgun running, which has its limitations. And B, they don't throw RPOs off it. They don't run the option off of it. So there's not a lot of motion. So there's not a lot of eye candy and stuff like that. They just kind of stand there. He takes a snap and he hands the ball off. You get a good push, it's over. So I think, and they're going to try and run the football because that's the issue with Russell. Like you have to build a run game out of this stuff because you can't, the volume, we saw it with let Russ cook. You cannot just build a huge voluminous passing game where it's all drop back passes, because he just doesn't. There's not enough concepts for you to run if you can't run stuff over the middle of the field. So Grover Stewart, mismatch of the week, of the century, lock of the millennium.
I like it. I like it. You have to make, the rule of this is that we are going to pick a side because it's a primetime game, but I will throw a caveat in there. If there is a player prop that you particularly like, and you just mentioned the run game. So, I mean, let's look at Melvin Gordon, and under 57.5 rushing yards. That is my favorite bet in this game. I am going to go Melvin Gordon under 57.5 rush yards. By the way, you can check it out on PFF app and .com, our favorite player props that you can see. I'm not touching the spread here. I think if I had to go one direction, I would probably go Colts +3 because of everything that Seth just said, not touching the total because, my God, both these offenses suck. So under 57.5 rushing yards is Melvin Gordon. Melvin Gordon is my favorite bet. I'll go to you next, Brad.
Yeah, my favorite bet in this game, I will hop on the total. I know we just talked about how neither team can establish the run much and get blown up in the interior, but I think 42 with these quarterbacks is low. No Shaquille Leonard. You mentioned a lot of throwing over the middle is reading the mic, so maybe, I guess, he plays more will, but nevertheless, just a big loss for the Colts, and their linebacker crew. I just think they're going to score enough. Tired defense on a Thursday. I like the over.
I like both things. Yeah, I like both things you said, George. Colts +3. Under for Melvin Gordon rushing yards. And of course, under 3.5 receptions for Judy, which is a very good number for us here on PFF Greenline. Cortland Sutton under 4.5, another good number for us on PFF Greenline. I'm a company man, so whatever PFF Greenline tells me to bet on, I do it.
Okay. I love that. All right. We're going to transition now to the more exciting of the two primetime games that we're going to discuss. That is Sunday night. The boss, Chris Collinsworth, will be live in Maryland, Baltimore, Maryland, for Ravens Bengals. This was before the season, I think, the matchup that everyone was waiting for in the AFC North. It still is, even though the routes here, I think, have been a little interesting. I mean, the Ravens are 3-1 against the spread. They're 2-2. They've played a couple of very good teams already. And the Bengals had a just miserable start to the season, losing to the Pittsburgh Steelers, who stink, and are 2-2 against the spread. So Burrow versus Lamar. Seth, where do you start here with this game?
I mean, obviously, this is a huge game for both parties here. The Ravens, like you said, like they're a good team. They played good teams, and they're kind of two flukes away. I saw today is like they've only trailed for 14 seconds the whole season. They're clearly a very good team. They can probably afford a loss, but you still don't want to go to 2-3, especially if that would mean the Bengals would be at 3-2. Bengals just can't afford a loss, and honestly, they haven't been a good team even in their 2 wins. So they're the team that you're got to be focused on, because this could be it for them. I know it's early in the season, but being 2-3, and then the Ravens at 3-2, and looking like they've done, this is really tough. Brad brought it up. Teams, just like we talked about with Russell Wilson, teams had started playing a lot of cover 2 against the Bengals, in a sense, doubling their best players, which are T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. And Burrow has just been off this year. Like, accuracy wise, he's not himself. And then the offensive line is I know it was supposed to be better, and it just hasn't been, especially the tackles. Interior is like okay, though. They are starting like a 4th or 5th round guard who is going to have issues. They obviously just assume that the 2 tackles would be better. And Lyle Collins is playing as poorly as maybe any tackle in the league, I guess. So that's not helping things. And then you just get Joe Burrow's play style, which is, hey, I'm going to try and make a play, right? I'm always going to try and make a play. When it works, it's great, but it does lead to a lot of sacks. So this has been a bad team. They can't run the football. Again, it goes back to the offensive line, but it also goes back to the fact, kind of like what I was saying with the Broncos, kind of basic run game. They kind of show you what's going to happen. They go under center. They run outside zone. That's it. So you can play fast if you're a defense. If you're a linebacker, you're thinking, I know what's about to happen. It might be less to right, but I know exactly what play it's about to happen. So you can play fast. Not a lot of play action from under center. So again, that leads defenses to play fast. So no misdirection, no this, no that, no jet, no this. It's not very good. So they go in shotgun and they try and throw the ball all over the yard, and they can't protect long enough to kind of hit any big plays. They got to throw short, and it's a mess. It's really a mess. And it's like Burrow probably has the ability, given who he is, first overall pick, national champion, et cetera, went to the Super Bowl last year, to figure it out and fix it, and he does throw the ball over the middle. But like I said, the accuracy has not been good. So if that continues, it's going to be rough.
Lyle Collins, by the way, to your point, we've ranked 70 offensive tackles in the NFL so far this year. And Lyle Collins, who came to Cincinnati and said, "Don't worry, Joe Burrow, I got your back," had a little bit of Skyline chili and literally turned into Skyline chili. He ranked 63rd out of 70 offensive tackles. The problem is that is basically par for the course, right? Jonah Williams, 60th out of 70 tackles. Their interior, they have a top 20 or top 30 graded player at one position, and that is center. You look at the Baltimore Ravens and, Matabuki, 9th out of 124 defensive interior linemen. They obviously have Calais Campbell still there. And on the outside, even though the defense has not played well, and this is going to be my next question for you, Seth, the Baltimore Ravens, from an EPA per play perspective, have been atrocious defensively. But you look at the parts that they have and you go, they should be better. So what's the deal with the Baltimore Ravens defense? And is this one that you like the matchup versus a Bengals team that cannot run the ball, that cannot pass protect, and that is relying on Jamar Chase and T. Higgins to beat Marlon Humphrey and Marcus Peters?
Yeah, look, I will say, obviously, they had really good success against them last year. Mm-hmm. Different coordinator. So that changes things a little bit. And, they can get to their dime package. They can get to their 6 DB package, especially if you can stop the run on first down and bring up a 2nd and 10 or take a lead at some point in the game and kind of play from ahead. You can get into your dime package, which they run the most in the league. I think they're at 30%, somewhere between 20 and 30%. They get the rookie on the field, Kyle Hamilton, to play with Marcus Williams, hell of a safety, and Chuck Clark, who kind of moves down in the box, is kind of like a dime linebacker in those situations. Now you get all the matchups you want. Right now you got DB bodies on the field, 6 DBs, so you can match up with all the guys you want. I'm not saying you love to play man against the Bengals. We just talked about it, but at least you can get the right matchups that you're not like super worried. And again, it starts with guy like Matabuike. I don't know how to. That was bad.
I thought Eric was the worst at pronouncing.
Just say numbers, just jersey numbers. Just
my goodness,
Justin. This must be another Sinbad situation. It's just Justin.
Thank God that Chris. One of the funny things that I learned, having spent some time with Chris and the production team at NBC and Sunday Night Football, is how much time they spend learning how to pronounce the names. Because, like, as we know, with Troy Aikman trying to pronounce Samson Ebukam a few moons ago, it can get really ugly really quickly. And so the effort that, like, Chris, for example, puts in just to pronouncing the names is pretty Herculean, so he doesn't mess it up. It's a good thing you're not advising him on that.
Yeah, we'd have a lot of FCC fines, I think, if I was advising him on pronunciation and stuff like that. Anyways, Justin M, very good player. And again, it really goes back to these ideas of, and Eric wrote a paper about this about a year ago about, hey, if teams are going to start playing too high coverages, which is we've seen at such an incredible rate this year, guess who's important? The 2 tackles, 2 defensive tackles. Like, they have to be able to deal with the fact that you don't have a lot of box players anymore. Right? You don't have a linebacker that just say, well, that's okay, that's my gap, so don't worry about it. Like, you got to be able to play 2 gaps, gap and a half, whatever, all these terms. So, like, again, the Ravens interior is going to have to be important for them. And like, the Bengals can't deal with those type of players. Like, they're just not good enough in the run game right now. They don't create a lot of yards before contact. They don't create a lot of yards after contact. Mixon has just been kind of okay this year, so it's going to be tough for them. Like I said, if you can get into good situations, The issue with the Ravens is that they busted a lot of coverages, and that's a lot of teams back in games, namely the Miami Dolphins. So it's like they're going to come after you with some blitz stuff. If they don't bust, which I mean, I don't think you can like really say like that's something that's like going to carry over week to week, but you never know. So if they don't bust, I think that they could have a really good day.
Yeah, you mentioned the change in coordinators, and obviously, Wink Martindale now with the Giants, infamous for just sending the house at a high, very often, we'll say. What have you seen so far from Mike McDonald coming over from Michigan? Similar, different, kind of what have you seen there?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the game to watch if you're trying to look at this defense through the lens of playing against the Cincinnati Bengals is really last week against the Buffalo Bills, a similar-ish type of offense. They want to get 3 receivers on the field who are just receivers, right? And they want to play kind of spread. So you're going to see the very similar thing for what the Bills like to do. And it was a very, something that I noticed while watching Mike McDonald last year in Michigan was like they came over there, and there was a similar thing where he took over from a defensive coordinator named Don Brown, who blitzed exactly like what Wink Martindale did and played cover one exactly like Wink Martindale did. Maybe not exactly, but at those rates. And so he came in, he kind of just calmed everything down. Like, hey, we're going to play a little more zone. We're going to play with 2 high safeties. If we want to get that second, loaded box, we're going to spin the safety late. And so you're seeing a lot of those type of things. And again, when I watched that game against the Bills, you saw the same thing: quarters coverage, spinning the safety late, keeping everything in front of you, and then trying to play it like that. And I think you'll see a similar game plan this week against the Bengals. Like, you're not going to see a lot of cover one and blitzing. Again, going back to the same point we had, like, can you game plan against specific quarterbacks? And hopefully Mike McDonald can.
Biggest mismatch here, whether it be, scheme versus scheme, unit versus unit, player versus player, where do you see that kind of crux in the game being here? Is it a quarterback versus a defense, or is there something that will, kind of be dictate the environment the quarterbacks play in?
A couple of things I'm interested in. I think there's a lot there. The Ravens can do some similar things that the Dolphins had some success with. Obviously, Tua's not going to run around like Lamar does, but actually that probably adds to the schematic maybe advantage that the Ravens might have in their kind of option run game. And then the other thing is, going back to La'el Collins, is like, I mean, and I can tell you exactly who would play opposite of him as a pass rusher for the Ravens. Mm-hmm. But, if it's like a guy like Odafe Oweh, who like he's still learning the game, but like he can run. Mm-hmm. And right now, La'el Collins cannot run. It's bad. He's going to get beat by speed time and time again. And that's a recipe for disaster against an edge rusher like that. So that to me is a very big matchup that like La'el Collins is not, he was like okay last year too with the Cowboys, but like they need him to just be that. And if he's just that, then I think they can get away with it. But if he's the player that he's been the first 4 weeks, it's going to be bad again.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting to see, Lamar versus that defense. Are they able to contain him at all? You remember a few years ago when he literally put the entire Bengals defense in a blender. And coming off of a pretty embarrassing loss where, you had obviously the blown lead, but also the Harbaugh, Jim Harbaugh, what am I even saying? The decision to go for it on 4th down, the Peters thing on the sideline. I do feel like there will be a lot of juice there. Let's do this. I want to debut this new segment. Before we do, let's do our favorite pick for this game. It is Ravens -3. Total is 48.5. I'll go last this time, and I'll let Seth go first.
I like the over, and I just think about the 2 games last year. Even though there's these, the Bengals offense has not played very well, I think about those 2 games last year, and I think there's clearly some sort of matchup advantage that I think the Bengals enjoy. No one beats Marlon Humphrey more than Jamar Chase, so that's always a possibility. Again, it shouldn't be as much man to man, but still. So I like the over in this game.
Bradley?
Yeah, I see what you're saying there for sure. I think the loss of DJ Reader for Cincinnati could definitely help the over as well, and help Lamar Jackson dance around a little bit without any A-gap pressure, probably from Cincinnati. I'm going to go with that being said, though, I'm going to go with Lamar Jackson under 1.5 touchdown passes. I think they're going to try to get back to running the football. They've been terrible after contact. They just have not been good. Dobbins is not 100%. I think Lamar is going to run all over the yard and probably won't throw 2 touchdown passes.
Like where your guys' heads are at. I think if you're going to bet the spread or money line here, I think the play is Bengals plus 145 on the money line. I really do, but I again am going to probably not go in that direction. I like Lamar under half an interception. His passing game this year, I think, has been underrated. We always talk about his rushing. He continues, I think, to improve as a passer. I do think, based on obviously them being the favorite, you expect them to play from a lead here. He has better passing grade, 115 passer rating when clean. That's the direction that I will go. I'll probably also be tempted to take a little Lamar over, and be interested to see how this game plays out. Might be interested in betting it live. But here is the new segment. It's Would You Rather. And Would You Rather, it's a famous game. Everyone's played it in college. They've usually done it with things other than football. But the question here is very simple, Seth. Would you rather have Lamar Jackson or Joe Burrow?
You can't ask me that, man.
Yeah, I watched this guy. You got that question?
Yeah. It's my heart is Joe Burrow. It's not even close, because I'll always have 2019 with Joe. We'll always have 2019 together.
For people that don't know, Seth covered LSU fairly closely.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So I have to go with him. I will say that, going back to what I was saying, like, if the accuracy doesn't improve, and like he missed time, he had the appendix in the preseason. So like, there could be stuff like that. If the accuracy doesn't improve, then it might be rough for a while until it bounces back. But it probably will.
What about you, Brad?
I'll go with Lamar. Their receivers right now, 27th receiving grade, just have never really had a great unit around him. Obviously, Mark Andrews is a great tight end, but I just think you watch this season, and I've never seen a guy. I mean, statistically, he's accounting for more yardage than we've seen in a very long time. But yes, he has limitations. There's things he can continue to improve on. But top in yards per attempt and yards per carry, it's just nuts. And I think you can cater things around him and just create an offense that you just don't see anywhere else.
This is so tough for me too, because both guys have suffered from environments that have been suboptimal in certain situations. So Lamar has never really had much of a receiving, core as Mark Andrews and a young Rashad Bateman. And on the other side of things, like Joe Burrow has dealt with Zach Taylor and an awful offensive line. So there's a lot of things I think we still have to learn about both those guys. I will say that both of them have something that I love, which is and this is like the anti-analytics part of me, like these guys are leaders, gamers, like you love rooting for them. You can tell the players on the team love playing for them. So you're really splitting hairs here. I will say this. I have seen from Lamar, the ceiling be a little bit higher than it has been for Joe Burrow. We saw Joe Burrow really come to, play really well once he got a Jamar Chase, or he had T. Higgins, had a Tyler Boyd. What we've seen from Lamar is even with receivers that aren't great, he is so dynamic that he can change a game completely. And I'm going to throw out all of the garbage about he can't win in the playoffs. Like, go watch Joe Burrow's playoff run and tell me that he didn't. I mean, he played well, but tell me that wasn't like there's a lot of luck involved in that. And that's what it takes. And Lamar has not had that on his side yet. I think that for our first Would You Rather, definitely challenging enough question. But I need to make sure I don't ask one where there's an LSU tie next time.
Yeah, you messed up, because I'm pretty sure Joe Burrow's playoff run was amazing. He threw 7 touchdown passes against Oklahoma, and then he threw 5 against Clemson. So I think that's a pretty good playoff run. Okay, buddy?
Yeah. There you go. Next time we'll debate the best thing to serve at a funeral with Seth, because that's clearly what he likes to do. Seth, this was a blast, man. I'm looking forward to doing this every week with you, bringing some knowledge, and next time some party sandwiches. All right,
buddy, next time it's Skyline Chili, so get ready. All right, I'll see you guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Seth.
Yep.
Before we get to our next guest, reminder that on PFF and the PFF app, you can get all of PFF's fantastic premium content. And here's a hint for all of you people out there. Right now, it's free in the app. So I would go download it right this very moment. You will also get, only in the app, the latest, greatest breaking news and analysis from Brad Spielberger himself and team. So a lot of things that are in the app that you can't get on pff.com, and you can get it all for free right now. Plus our betting dashboards, mismatches, fantasy rankings, and start sit tool. So go download that by searching PFF in the iOS app store. It's not out on Android yet. I hear you guys, and only in the US, but we are working on it. Also, go check out Symbol. It's a stock market for sports. You can go buy and sell shares of your favorite teams, watch it go up and down, collect a dividend when they win games, and enjoy betting on your teams in a way that is a little less stressful, I guess. Like, you can hold on to those shares and watch them bounce back. You can buy the dip and you can sell them high. Go to Symbol, SIMBULL, in the App Store and use promo code FORECAST to receive a free team stock valued at up to $150 when you sign up. Also, no house advantage. It says it right there in the name. It's changing the game by offering the most dynamic fantasy sports platform available. You play pick'em contests versus other people for a shot at winning $250K in cash. Download the app, choose a contest, select player props that you like, and then correctly select whether they will go over or under. You can up to 20x your entry, play versus the house. You can play versus friends. And you can only have to choose up to 5 player prop over unders. It's very simple. You can do the NFL and all other major sports. Use promo code FORECAST, FORECAST, at nohouseadvantage.com, or download the app on the App Store and get your first deposit matched up to $25. That's with promo code FORECAST at nohouseadvantage. All right, our next guest, you all know him probably, I would hope, because he's been a member of the printing press for a while. He's come on the Forecast many times. Good friend of the show, Kevin Cole. Records on the Fantasy Football podcast with Ian, also has Unexpected Points, which is a delightful listen, especially if you are a member of the printing press and like a little numbers, little analytics. Also known for adjusted scores, which get the people going, because fans love nothing more than hearing that their team that won on the scoreboard actually lost in a spreadsheet. I particularly enjoy how that makes people go crazy. But I've got to start with this, Kevin. So you've been publishing your adjusted scores. They're incredibly illuminating and telling kind of the story within the story. But the Sunday night game, Chiefs Bucks, the adjusted score was quite literally, it was the same as the actual score. So did you just cook the books? Was the idea that you would just like give one out, a little Easter egg for the people? How did that work?
Yeah, I'd love to say that I did do that. And rather than like delete and resend it out, I posted later about the fact that it actually wasn't the same. I transcribed it incorrectly as the actual score. It was 37-28, so it was pretty close to the actual score. 9-point differential as opposed to a 10-point differential. So no, it wasn't. I made a mistake. It happens. Sometimes the spreadsheets fail you. Sometimes the brain more so on Monday morning fails you. But I'm glad that some people picked up on that. And maybe that'll bring Chiefs fans back into the fold. You know what's surprising is fans hate it when you tell them they should have lost when they won. Somehow they also hate it when you tell them they should have won when they lost. So it's really, there's not an equilibrium here. There's not symmetry in this. It's just fans hate, basically, especially on Twitter. Everyone hates. So I try to ignore that and pay more attention to the people who silently start following me on Twitter, but may not say anything, as opposed to those very loudly want to yell at me.
You found the one thing where you just piss off everybody. This sounds like my takes about the New York Jets and the Pittsburgh Steelers, which, by the way, I'm getting a lot of great, just fantastic engagement from Jets fans who are currently hanging a banner for a game-winning touchdown score by Hall of Famer Breece Hall. So it should be known that hate is evenly distributed. Here's what we're going to do. We are going to pick ultimately a lock of the week. And the way that we're going to do it with this trio is we're going to talk about the angles and bets that we like the best. And at the end, we'll try and reach a consensus that obviously is going to be a stone cold lock. We'll definitely hit. There's no way it's going to lose. And we all put all of our investment capital into it. and see how it goes. Let's start. We just had Seth Galina on, Kevin. So we talked about Thursday night football and Sunday night football. And maybe I'll start there. Is there anything within either of those two games that you particularly like?
Yeah, I mean, starting with Thursday night, not trying to just jump on the Island game bandwagon here, but I do. And I like something on Sunday night also. It's funny because this week I have a few different plays that I like, 4 exactly, and 2 of them happen to come in those games. So I like the over for this Denver Colts game. Jonathan Taylor, we have to lean into running backs don't matter, of course. Make some more people upset at us. So Jonathan Taylor's out, but Matt Ryan was actually functional last week. I think maybe that was like a hidden part of what people didn't see.
Mm.
They got bageled by the Jaguars earlier this year. He looked very discombobulated on other measures, taking a lot of sacks. They were good. They just couldn't run the ball. And they did make a little bit of a comeback there. And, Denver's been one of these teams where Russ hasn't been as bad as the perception, probably. They have trouble getting into the end zone, and we can get a double running backs don't matter with Javonte Williams out in this one. So, let's do it. 42 has a little bit of a lean, and I think it's even within our green line, it's also agreeing with me. I do like to check green line for a little bit of a sanity check, and it's agreeing with me there. So that's my play on Thursday night.
I like that. I've been waiting for the opportunity to really get back into things that people hate. And that is running backs don't matter. I think if we can start talking pass rush versus coverage again, that would really be like the holy grail. Of those 42, 42 is so low, but this year we have seen such a weird, unders are absolutely killing. Offenses are so much worse, especially from a quarterback perspective. And now you have people talking about how trench warfare and running backs do matter. Brad, let's go to you next. What are you thinking?
Yeah, so that's a play I picked earlier. So I'm very happy to hear Kevin say that. I have green line agrees with me, and Kevin agrees with me.
So
Randy Gregory it's as good as it gets. Randy Gregory not going to be in the game. Top 5 right now in pass rush win rate. I mentioned Shaquille Leonard. The running backs being out is irrelevant to this play. I'm with him on that one 100%. I think we'll definitely see more than 42.
Okay. All right, let's move on to the Sunday slate. I'm going to pitch you guys a game here that is probably a little less sexy than those two, and that is the Jacksonville Jaguars hosting the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans are a 7-point underdog in this game. Now, I know that the Jaguars just lost to the Eagles, and there's a reason for them to try and get back to health here. And the Texans, for all of their, ability to kind of impress in situations where they have not been great, were not able to cover last week, despite a valiant comeback effort. But, here's kind of the way that I see this. 7, you basically got a blowout here. While I do really like the Jaguars, and a lot of metrics really point to them being fantastic, they've been one of the better teams at converting on first and second down into another set of downs, as Timo Riske has made popular, and they've been really good from both an offensive and defensive standpoint. The Texans, despite not having any wins, I just don't think are that bad of a team. And Davis Mills has a 70 PFF grade. Like, I think Trevor Lawrence has played fantastically. Davis Mills has been fine. We just haven't seen them come through the door here in an interdivision matchup. I just feel that 7 is too many. How do you guys feel about riding with the Texans?
I mean, I would definitely lean that direction, if anything. So what we've seen from Lawrence this year is, I think overall, the Jaguars have been good. I mean, they've been good by my hated adjusted scores so far this year. But when they've struggled, and a little bit more offensively than defensively, their defense has been a little bit better. I mean, I think even in that game last week, they were up 14-0. They had a chance to be up 21-0 in that game. They had the Eagles stopped on 4th and goal from the 3.5-yard line before they even got their first score there. So the defense has been good, but offensively, Lawrence and that offense still has a ways to go, especially when facing some pressure. And the Texas defense hasn't been great at generating pressure. I have them about being league average, but league average-ish is probably better than what you'd expect from them. And if they can put him under a little bit of pressure, then we start to see the inaccuracy issues. Then we start to see some of the decision-making stuff. People who are crowning Trevor Lawrence after week 3, we're probably a little premature doing that. So I'm with you on this one.
Very
yeah,
nice.
I don't want to catch you off guard, but I am curious if you've been tracking adjusted point differential. That struck me as you were talking about it. That'd be maybe interesting to look into. But I agree with both of you guys. I think 7's probably too many. I think these outside corners for Houston will do well. Zay Jones might not play in this game. Obviously, Christian Kirk has been in the slot about 80% of snaps, and I think he'll do well. But yeah, I just think 7's too many. Trevor Lawrence with the 4 fumbles last week definitely came back down to earth. I think it's going to be a pretty ugly game. Not sure I have a lean on the total, but I think 7's too many.
Total of 43.5. By the way, if you are feeling a little spicy, plus like 270 are the Texans to win that game. Kevin, we'll go to you next.
Yeah, so let's go to. Okay, so I'm just gonna this is what I'm just gonna say. Let's just blind bet. Can we just blind bet an over of 39 at Carolina, San Francisco? I know Baker Mayfield has been awful this year, but he can't be this awful going forward, right? Like, it just cannot continue. I see skepticism in Brad's eyes on this one, but I don't think it can continue going forward. And then, my love as a Jimmy G truther is strong, is, cannot be dissuaded from this. And we're in the year of our Lord 2022. We have a 39 total in a game where San Francisco is a good team. I know everyone the expectation in this game is that they're going to blitz the hell and they're just going to destroy, whether they need to bring extras or whether Nick Bosa is going to destroy Baker Mayfield in this one. But even in that circumstance, you could get some extra points like we saw last week with a pick 6 or with a turnover that puts you right in position to score against Carolina. So I don't know. I almost have to blind bet that just for the fact that I think Baker and that offense is probably better than the league's worst offense, which they've been so far. And I think Jimmy G gives a decent floor to the offense for the 49ers also.
I was happy to see, Kevin, that we were like the only 2 people on Twitter that really appreciated that performance on Monday night from Jimmy G. I mean, I'm being
somewhat serious though. I mean, I'm actually trying to tilt.
You were not being serious.
I wasn't being fully serious, but okay. Even the play where he basically almost threw an interception, almost threw a pick 6 that Deebo Samuel took all the way. There is something to being willing to throw the ball to your playmakers, even if they're not open, right? Sometimes it's awful. Sometimes it's horrible. Sometimes it puts them in an okay position to go forward. And I think I'm being somewhat facetious here, but Jimmy with the 4D chess is, imagine taking one defender out of the mix because they're going for the interception and they miss. So then you already have the rest of the defenders that are ready to go going forward. But anyway, the larger point on Jimmy was he was back to being the same guy who converts third downs. He was doing that consistently, which they did not do against the Broncos. And that's what he's been in his entire career, is someone where you give him a third and medium and he converts that more often than he doesn't. I think there's going to be more of that going forward.
I respect it.
Let me just say this, okay, real quick. Ike Ekwonu, 61st of 70 NFL tackles that we've graded this year.
All right.
Will Nick
potential
Bosa,
to get better then? I see that as potential.
He must get better. That's the only conclusion, right? He can't be worse. Will Nick Bosa set the single game sack record? I don't even know what it is, but will he set it in this game? Very possible. I think I agree with you, right? The regression to the mean for Carolina. I think there's a legit chance that Carolina is like the worst team in the NFL. 39 though, with a functioning Jimmy G. I mean, he's either going to give the Panthers an opportunity to score on defense.
Exactly.
Or they are going to torch this Matt Rule defense in Charlotte, North Carolina. Let's go to you next, Brad.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting to see a get-right game for an offense against this Niners defense. Bosa had 14 pressures against the Rams. I'm going with another. So he might set the single game pressure record.
What about? I got another.
That was most in a single game in the last 5 years, by the way.
Yeah,
I got another good angle on this. The team rallying around Matt Rule. As he's the hot seat around Matt
rallying
Rule.
around
rousing speech.
So do you think like rallying around, like they get around him, they tie something over his head and then they take him outside and like that kind of, that's the rallying around.
No, we're going to see. Oh yeah. Well, yeah, I don't know. I think there could be some other guys who get thrown off of the side a little bit sooner than Rule, but yeah. So just never forget that Joe Brady was the problem there. There's
Yes,
never
that
forget
was
that.
that was the issue. All right,
Exactly
Brad,
right. Yeah.
where are you going next?
Yeah, so same from that same Monday matchup. The Rams lost another offensive lineman in center Coleman Shelton, and they're playing the second best team in getting pressure without blitzing in the Dallas Cowboys. And I think 5.5 points there, even with Cooper Rush. Maybe I'm a little bit overreacting to the streak they're on, but I think it's too many points against a Rams offense that is just cannot run the football to save their life, and now has one of the worst pass protection units, bottom 5 in our grading, and lost yet another starter on that offensive line.
Are you so Cooper Rush was amazing. Is Dak, I've not been following the news clearly carefully enough. Is Dak officially back for this game?
Dak cannot play in this game. He cannot grip, according to Dr. Jerry Jones, MD, he cannot grip a football well enough to throw yet. I still like it with Cooper Rush at 5.5.
Okay. So 5.5 Cooper Rush. I'll be honest with you. I like it more with Cooper Kupp, knowing what that offense will be. They're better with Dak Prescott. There's no doubt about it. I would be worried about betting on Dak Prescott in the first game back. Just going to say that. I think it'll be interesting, what they do with CeeDee Lamb. Cooper Rush has been enamored with CeeDee Lamb. Really cool graph that I saw. I'm forgetting exactly who it was. Was it Arjun? Might have been Tej. I'm not sure. Kevin, you may remember this, but it was the percentage of first reads that a receiver commanded and the average depth of target downfield on those throws. Do you remember what I'm talking about? Have you seen this?
Yeah. I think it was Arjun for sure.
Okay.
But yeah.
I think it was Arjun Menon. Great, fantastic follow. Was on the show on Sunday night. And CeeDee Lamb is, I think he's second or third in terms of percentage of first reads that he commands. And it has the highest average depth of target of that top 3. I mean, he's been a maestro. I think it'll be interesting to see what they do with him and Jalen Ramsey there. Will they be able to move him around enough? But Cooper Rush loves him. 65.5 receiving yards, I think is his player prop. I would probably go over that. I'm looking for what his reception number is at. I would probably take the over there as well. But I think 5.5, I like that. I'm a fan. Next one that I will go to, I'm going to try and take a team that is less stinky than the last one, but it's going to be a little hard for me. And that means that I am going to the Tennessee Titans. They are playing in Washington. They're playing the Washington Commanders. I am completely punting on Carson Wentz. It is over. It is done. They should kill the Carson Wentz experiment. I think that happens here. I think Jeffrey Simmons, who's 4th among 124 defensive interior linemen, they have a phenomenal defensive interior there in Tennessee. He is going to run straight through the poorest defensive interior of the Washington Commanders, and that is not going to bode well for Carson Wentz. So I like the Titans in Washington as a 2.5 point road favorite. I get it. It's less than 3, so I'm not going to freak out about it. And I think this is the end for Carson Wentz. How do you guys feel about
I can
that?
dig that. I can dig that one. I was on the Titans last week, so congratulations to me. But we'll talk about the ones. We won't talk about the ones that didn't win, of course, last week. But I was on the Titans last week. I guess, I don't know, like my contrarian nature just wants to say, can we back Carson Wentz somehow here with, now also you lost another tackle for this game. So it's even worse protection in this one. Yeah. Tannehill's been low-key good this year. I think that's been an underplayed story as everyone's focused on Derrick Henry. So I can get behind that. What I really want to see in this game, though, can we get Sam Howell into this game somehow? Can we already get a preview? Because I'm just looking today at the PFF mock draft for next year, and they have a quarterback going to the Commanders in the first 10 picks. I want to look at least at Sam Howell this year as a guy who somehow Bailey Zappi was drafted before him. I'm not sure how that happened, but he was a big prospect after his sophomore year before having a bad junior year and looked pretty good in the preseason. So that would be my ultimate goal. Titans crush. Sam Howell actually gets into the action. Please no Taylor Heineke, for the love of God. I mean, he's a great guy, but I do not need to see more of that.
I hope it's Sam Howell. Judah Fortgang, who writes a fantastic piece for us about live in-game betting strategy, talked about betting the Titans live under because they're good on scripted plays, and then they just salt crap away.
They're the worst team in the second half, I think, this
Yeah,
year.
they just do nothing.
And they score a touchdown on every first drive. So yeah.
Yeah. So, what do I not have faith in? Carson Wentz playing from behind. Certainly not. Kevin, your next bet.
Okay, so we're gonna go to Sunday night here, and I am going to pick the Bengals +3 against the Baltimore Ravens. I can see how some people may be off on this. I have been a little bit concerned about the Ravens offense for a couple of weeks now because of so many outlier plays. They've had a success rate that's been much lower than their equivalent efficiency because we're getting, 60, 70-yard rushes from Lamar Jackson. We're getting long plays down the field from Devin Duvernay. We're getting a couple of very, very long catches from Rashad Bateman, who I don't think is going to play in this game. He hasn't been practicing so far. You don't like mid-foot sprain. No. Andy Isabella is also going to the Ravens, which is maybe a little bit of a sign that Rashad Bateman is not looking so hot to play in this game. So offensively, I'm concerned. I know J.K. Dobbins is back, but they've been bad running the ball. And even with J.K. Dobbins back, 13 carries for 41 yards is okay, but we know that a running back is not going to turn around a rushing game. It's the same fallacy as when you see teams who are having trouble running the ball and then they decide they're going to take a running back in the first round to fix their running game. So I'm just concerned about that offense generally. And I know the Bengals have played absolutely no one at quarterback. This is the first time they're playing a non-backup for a significant portion of the game. But I do think they've had solid performance so far this season, rolling off of being pretty good at the end of last season defensively. And they have not been producing any offensive explosive plays. I think those can start to come against this Ravens secondary, which is not injured like it was last year, but can be burnt and can give up some big plays. So 3, I'm pretty happy about that. I know it was 3.5 when it opened. It's down to 3. I'm still okay there. If it was going to drop below 3, no way I'd touch it. But I just think these teams are basically equivalent with injury issues for the Ravens, with Bateman being out. And so I'll take the 3 here because that leans towards the Ravens being a little bit better team, and I'm not quite sure of it at this point.
Like it. Brad, where are you going next?
Yeah. So going off of I think there's some overreaction in both directions here with the Giants being 3-1, one of the worst 3-1 football teams in a very long time. And the Packers mentioned Bailey Zappi going to overtime, a shootout with Bailey Zappi, took 2 possessions to win. But all that said, flying out to London,
shootout
going across the pond. But say it again.
Shootout might be a bit of an overstatement. It was close. I'll give you that. It was like one of those like tournament games where it's just awful basketball the entire time. But you're like, oh my God, it's close. It's close at the end of the game. Let's watch to see who wins.
It was like an early 90s playoff game in like the low 80s. Yeah, it was like the Detroit Pistons just throwing bows out there. But yeah, nevertheless, I think it's a get-right game. I think you have an experienced coach up against a rookie coach in his 5th game flying to London. Daniel Jones did practice today, but for the first time this week. I don't think we'll be 100% for the game. I think he is going to play. Kadarius Toney and Wan'Dale Robinson still banged up. I just think Green Bay, they're going to dominate. Evan Neal has had some trouble in pass protection. That's where Rashawn Gary lines up and is a defensive player of the year candidate, of course. Jair Alexander should be back for Green Bay. So long answer short, it's a smaller number. I think there was a look ahead before the start of this season. I think it would be above 8, above 9. I think it would be 10 plus. You can get it right now, 8 to 9 range, depending on the book you're looking at. And I like that play.
I'm a fan. I've got one more, and then I'll see if you guys have any more.
Well, what guys say one other thing on that. I actually had that was my other one. This was my other one, was 8 for Green Bay. So just to tell you, Daniel Jones, I know he's practicing, he's going to play, but what he's done so far this season, if you look at his total production so far this season, he's at -12 expected points added on plays he's been involved with. But included in that is about 15 positive expected points through scrambling and through rushing. If he can't do that in this game, that's a very significant part about what they've been doing offensively. They're not going to throw the ball well offensively. And again, this is one of these, like, Saquon Barkley is great. He makes great plays. But when you're dependent upon, hey, we need a 60-yard touchdown from Saquon Barkley here to get our offense going because Daniel Jones can't move anymore, I just don't see it happening.
The Bears made Daniel Jones look like Lamar Jackson in that game. He had 2 30-yard rushing touchdowns. It was as bad as it gets.
He was rushing pretty well though in some of the earlier games too. I mean, that's a part of his like floor for this offense, and that floor is not there. That's why I also was a little bit interested in the under at 40.5, but I think it's safer just to go with the Packers.
I dig it. My last one is very simple. Raiders are playing the Chiefs in Kansas City. I have not a ton of faith in the Raiders defense. Haven't in a little while. I am encouraged by what I have seen out of Kansas City recently, obviously playing what was a very good Tampa Bay defense and looking like they had it under control. So over 2.5 passing touchdowns for Patrick Mahomes. You can, I think in a few books, you'll probably be able to find it out there already. If not, wait for it. I'm back on the bandwagon. I fell off for a couple of weeks. I'm back. A member of the printing press reminded me on social media that you can't abandon. You've got to stay strong. You've got to fight through the pain here. And so I'm going to as well. Kevin, Brad, do you have any others, or should we figure out which one we're going to ride with?
I have a prop, so it's not tied into that, but I'll just touch on it really quick. Kevin talked about it. He actually explained exactly why I like it. It's Christian McCaffrey over 34.5 receiving yards, because I think he's just going to get a million screens and checkdowns and get the ball out quickly, and then he'll go to work, in the open field.
Well, they finally used him last week. That's what was surprising, that he hadn't had, I don't think it was more than 5 targets in a game. He ended up with 9 for 81. He actually lined up in the slot. They figured out, hey, we can put him out there and score a touchdown. So yeah, hopefully they'll do more of that this week.
All right. I'll go around the horn here. Favorite one doesn't have to be one of yours. Could be someone else's. Where are your guys' heads at? Start with you, Brad.
Yeah, I'll go. I mean, look, we've had Ben Brown on, we've had Seth on, we've now had Kevin on, and you and I agree. It's Cincinnati +3. I just think, I also agree with Kevin. It's still on the number, which I think is important. I think it will be a close game, a good game, a great Sunday night football game for Chris. But, I think we all like it. And I just think Cincy +3 makes a lot of sense.
All right, Kevin, what about you?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go. I mean, that's probably second for me to the Denver Indy over, but it's pretty close. It's pretty close to me. Maybe I'm just a little bit scared that Lamar Jackson will just destroy, and you'll end up feeling like an idiot afterwards, because this Bengals team, which it's really weird how things can change year over year, because last year I was just screaming from the rooftops how this team's going to regress. They're not as good as you think they are. This offense is as good as you think they are. And now this year I find myself liking them versus the crowd. It's just crazy how quickly things can flip up perception wise, but like I said, it's a very close second for Bengals +3, so that's probably gonna align with you guys.
Okay, I'm a fan. I can get on board with Bengals +3. Our hometown Bengals. I like a lot of the other ones out there. Quite frankly, I don't feel the slates have been weird, so you may not feel great about any, but it's a primetime game. It's our guy Joe Burrow. I think you're getting some value there. I would say this. Depending on how you feel about betting this game, like I think I will probably just bet Bengals like +150. To win the game. Obviously 3 is a valuable number, but you're pushing at 3. I'm definitely a little concerned about the offensive line for Cincinnati. But Jamar Chase has fared well in those matchups against Marlon Humphrey. So let's do it. Lock of the week this week. Bengals +3 in Baltimore on primetime. We have one last thing that we're going to do with Kevin, and this ties into our new segment that we are doing. We are going to do our top 5 power ranking. Sorry. And we're not going to spend a ton of time discussing it. We'll obviously note the differences, and this will lead to the last bit of this segment. So let's start with you, Kevin, your top 5 in the NFL right now.
Okay, sure. I'll even tell you about some, there's a tier drop also in this one perfect. Here. So Bills number 1, Chiefs number 2, which may be consistent for most people here. I'm going to have a tier drop after this. Mm-hmm. And then the next 3 are Eagles, 49ers, and Bucks are my next 3. And then I'm also going to have a tier drop after this, but we're not going beyond this. But no. So that's my top 5.
Okay. Brad, what about you?
Yeah, very, very similar. So Buffalo, Kansas City, teardrop as well. But then I went Buccaneers, Eagles, San Fran. I don't know if I was pandering more to Kevin or George with the San Fran, but I believe it.
Jimmy G, come on. We're all Jimmy G truthers deep down.
You have
inside.
to have faith. You have to have faith in Jimmy G. So I'm similar here. The team that I had trouble kicking out were, I'll just say this, the Baltimore Ravens. I wanted to put them in there. I think they could be in there. I think from a completeness perspective, they're just not quite there yet, even from a quarterback perspective, that they certainly are. I go Bills, Chiefs. I likewise have a tier below. And then I'm going to be a little strange here. I'm going to still go Bucks. And we have not seen the full complement of what they offer. And the way I'm doing this is thinking about, okay, what are the things that are not stable that are going to eventually correct themselves? I think that health is one of those. The Eagles have been very, very healthy and have obviously caught the world by storm, but they've played some easy teams. I am then going Eagles and then going 49ers, and Ravens were the team that I was considering there. This brings me to our new segment, Kevin. It's called Would You Rather? And here it is. Would you rather, if you are the NFC winner, okay, you're in the Super Bowl, would you rather face the Buffalo Bills or the Kansas City Chiefs?
I mean, I'm just going to go by tough one. Okay, so I'll tell you my thing on this. I'm going to be a nerd. And I'm going to say I'd rather face the Chiefs because I feel like at least on the defensive side of the ball, assuming that like the Bills get healthier too, Tre'Davious White, everyone else comes into play there. That would be a tougher play. I did think though, it was interesting to me. I don't know if you believe the same thing. When Mahomes played in his first Super Bowl, second Super Bowl, he didn't really have a chance, obviously. But when he played his first Super Bowl, he did look a little nervous or kind of shook or out of sorts. He was dirting the ball a couple of times. So maybe there is something to, your first Super Bowl having some nerves, and there could be a reason you would say Mahomes has been there, done that, so you don't want to face him. But I think there's a big enough gap between the two teams, which doesn't have to be that big to make the deciding point, that I would still say I'll face the Chiefs and have a chance against that Chiefs defense.
Okay. I asked this obviously specifically because I was curious whether, we'd flip-flop on the ranking there. Brad, what would you go with?
Yeah, no, my answer is the same, and my thought process is pretty much the same. It's kind of the theme of the show, I guess. It's that the Bills can get home with 4 rushers now. I think it was their biggest weakness last season. I think it's why they lost the game with 13 seconds left against Kansas City last year, but also just for multiple playoffs, they just could not get home with their front 4. They, drafted it over and over again. Obviously signed Von Miller. Like you said, haven't even seen Trey White yet, their best corner. I think they're the most complete team in football, but not a decent amount, but I think the most complete team in football, like comfortably.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't had Jordan Phillips and Ed Oliver yet. Like,
right.
Like those guys, week 1 when Jordan Phillips was there, it was on. And then also against the Titans, they had, I calculate like fast pressure rate when you get there in 2.5 seconds or quicker, 50% of dropbacks for Ryan Tannehill. They were getting there without blitzing. So like even the defense you've seen the last couple of weeks is impaired versus like what they could be by the end of the season.
Yeah. Damn it. I was hoping, to catch one of you guys there. Kevin, your point is the one that makes it close for me. You feel as though at this point, Mahomes should be playing kind of free and easy. He's been to 2 Super Bowls. But I actually feel that if he gets to this Super Bowl, there is a little bit of, okay, well, now there's no Tyreek. You have to sort of prove yourself here. The last one didn't look good. So I actually think from a pressure standpoint, like, for the Bills, like we're a juggernaut. We'll be here every year, the Oklahoma City Thunder thing. And Josh Allen just like, he seems to get it from the ability to sort of play free and easy. And I think he would continue to, but it's interesting. I do think it's closer than the current distance between the two is in the power ranking. Right. And so like if these two teams were to play today on a neutral field, I think that distance between them is greater than it is for me in terms of which one I would rather face. I'd rather face the Chiefs, but I do think it is close. Curious what you guys, I'm sure the printing press has some wonderful thoughts. We'd love to hear from you guys. So hit us up on social media when we post this and tell us what you think. We'll be back on Sunday night. And we look forward to hanging out with you. Kevin, thank you so much for joining. Go check out all of Kevin's great work on PFF's app, pff.com. Unexpected Points podcast, which you can find anywhere that podcasts are distributed, and the Fantasy Football podcast with Ian Hartitz as well. Thank you guys. Love you.